Hi everybody! Alright, so tonight we're going to start sewing the Alleycat Romper, and I'm going to start with the Alleycat Romper version or the dress version that's included with the pattern, not the circle skirt. So I'm going to try and get through steps through 1 through 5 just for this video, and then we'll move on to the bodice for all the versions in the next one. So to start, we're going to take the bodice, both the main and the lining, and you're going to lay, let me just turn the camera, you're going to lay the back and the front right sides together. So the sides where your grain lines are most evident will be put together. And we're going to do just the shoulder seams. So you can use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine or a serger if you have it. I'm going to use my serger. So you'll just match the edges of the shoulder the best you can. And we'll do one side and then the other arm, the other shoulder. So again, match your corners the best you can. And then you're just going to go right across there. And then you'll do the other side again, making sure nothing has flipped. And you'll match your corners up and go right across there. And you're going to do that for, again, both the main and the lining. You'll just do across the tops of the shoulders. And then you're going to set both of those pieces aside, and we will use them again tomorrow evening. The second step, we're going to take the romper pieces or the dress version, and we're going to do the side seams and then between the legs for the romper. So again, you're going to match your front and your back. See here, corners to corner, and you'll have the front kind of flopping over, and that's just fine. And we're going to sew down one side and then the other. So match it right at that corner before it goes into the curve. Under. Pinning is also helpful to keep it straight, but so again, just make sure your edges match up while you're going down. And again, right sides together. Going to go to the other side and do the outside seam. The outside seam there. Again, match up your top corners and then just go right from that top point straight down. Now both the outsides should be done of your romper. So down one leg over here and then on the other side. And now we're going to do the little rainbow curve between the legs. So again, you'll want to match up your corners right at the bottom of the legs, and you're just going to go from one side all the way around to the other side. So just gently turn it as you go, making sure again the front and the back line up. All right, so that's step number 2. So either you have your skirt, the side seams done, or you have your romper, both the outside seams on both sides, as well as the inner part around the legs. So from that step, we're going to go into the cuffs for the romper. So you'll have your 2 cuffs. You're going to want to fold them right sides together, and you're just going to sew again from the top right down to the bottom side of each cuff. And then go on over to the second one. Again, match up the top corners. And there, now once you have them sewn on one side, just like that, you're then going to start flipping it right side out, but only halfway. So kind of like folding socks. You're gonna fold it down over, line up your seam, and just so again, the top and the bottom now match. Just like that. So you have your seam down one side, the bottom and the top line up, and you have this nice folded edge on the other side, and that will be the bottom of the romper. And we're going to sew that onto the leg in just a moment. We're going to flip the other one inside out as well, or partially, right side out I should say. So then again, you're lining up the top now with the bottom, keeping your seam together. Just like so. And you're going to want to maybe mark where the 2 middle points are. So usually I'll match up where the seam is, and I'll put another clip right on the opposite side, just so it can help judge how much to stretch fabric when I'm sewing it to the leg. So I have the seam on one side, and then exactly on the other side I put another clip at the raw edges, and that's where I'll know how to sew it, how much to stretch while I'm sewing. So I'll do the same thing for the other leg. And then you're going to take your romper bottom that's inside out and you're going to turn it right side. So here we have it, right side out. And you're now going to take your cuffs and put them over the bottom of the legs. And you're going to want the raw edges to meet. So you're going to take your folded edge and put that over the bottom of the leg first. And I like to have the seam line match the inside seam of the leg. Just looks smoother from the outside. So again, you're just literally stuffing the leg into the cuffed part here. And you're going to match the seams. And actually, yes, you have the two seams of the leg. So you're just going to match those up with your inside seam and the pin that you put on your cuff. Now this part can be a little bit tricky judging when you're just getting started to sewing kind of in the round on cuffs and whatnot. But once you have your inside seams matched and your outside pin with the seam matched, you're going to sew it on with, again, another zigzag stitch or with the serger to give you that stretch. You can use a basting stitch first. I know that was helpful early on when I started. So you'll just change your sewing machine to change it to like 4 or 5 millimeters apart, just to give you, just to have it stay for you so you know how much to stretch. And that way, if you need to take it out to redo it, it's not nearly as much work as a stitch that's closer together. So I'm just going to use my serger, and I'm going to line up those seams inside. Place it under. And I'm going to stretch the cuff, not the leg. So I'm going to stretch the cuff to kind of match where I have it on the actual leg of the romper. And make sure you have both pieces of the cuff. You don't want to have a hole because you only caught one layer. You'll need to have 3 layers together while you're sewing this. Just slowly keep turning as you move around the circle. Again, just keep checking how much stretch you need to make it all line up. So then when you have it sewed on all the way around, you're going to fold down your cuff and just double check that you did catch all the layers and that there's no holes around the edge. And if there is, just undo it and try it again. But again, the basting stitch can help to make sure that you've equally stretched it all the way around, and then you'll just need to go over with a smaller stitch afterwards or use your serger afterwards. So there we have one side with our cuff on the bottom, and you're going to do the same thing to the other side, and then we will go into the basting stitches across the top of both the dress version and the romper, but not the circle skirt. So again, we'll do that another evening. So I'm gonna leave the other leg cuffed so we can go right into the basting stitch. So I'm just gonna bring this over to my sewing machine. See if I can get a good angle here. So for the basting stitch, you want it a much longer stitch. That way you can, just play around with this a little bit. You want it a much longer stitch. That way you can easily pull it out afterwards, and it bunches up the fabric nicely. So I will put it, I'm going to do the front first, and I'm going to start just after the seam right here. And I'm going to switch it from my normal, it's 2.5, to really big, like 4.5, 5, and do it probably about 1/2 inch down. And I'm going to sew one line from one seam right to the other seam, and then I'm going to add a second one right underneath that. And you can do this in a color that's easy to see for when you need to pull it out afterwards. And once you get to the other seam, don't cut your thread right away. Leave a little length at the end. That way it gives you some room to actually pull. So you're going to go back to the other seam that you started with, and you're going to sew one line just underneath it, not too close. And so just right across, following that as a guide. Again, make sure you're not sewing it to the other half of the romper. And when you get to the end, just lift your needle so you can leave a fair bit of thread, and that will give you something to pull. And then you're going to do the same thing to the back side. You want 2 rows, about 1/2 inch down, and that's how we're going to bunch the fabric up in a later step. So again, by the end, you should have your side seams and between the legs done, and both cuffs, and then your gathering stitches. 2 across the top of the front and 2 across the top of the back. And then tomorrow we will move on to the bodice. If you have any questions at all, just let me know in the comments and I will get to them. Have a good night.